They said she was nothing, a broken omega, a collar-bound ghost in a world that worshipped strength. But tonight, in front of every alpha lord in the kingdom, Lyra Vane would become the thing they feared most. Proof that the hierarchy they built their empires on was a lie. If you want to see how a servant girl brought kings to their knees, stay until the end. Drop a like and tell me which city you're watching from. This is a story about survival, power, and the girl who refused to stay buried. The iron collar was cold against Lyra's throat. 21 years, and she'd never gotten used to it. She moved through Ironvale Keep's great hall like smoke, silent, swift, invisible. Her bare feet made no sound on the stone floor as she refilled crystal goblets, cleared plates smeared with venison fat, kept her eyes down and her breath shallow. The grand conclave was in full swing, and the hall blazed with torchlight and testosterone. Alpha lords from every territory had gathered, their wolves barely leashed beneath their skin, their voices booming with laughter and threats disguised as jokes. Lyra had learned long ago not to listen, not to care. Caring got you hurt. More wine, Omega. Lord Garrett's voice cut through her thoughts. He didn't look at her as he shoved his goblet toward her face. His wedding ring gleamed gold. His breath smelled like brandy and rot. She took the goblet without a word, refilled it from the pitcher she carried, set it back on the table. Her hands didn't shake. They hadn't shaken in years. Pathetic, someone muttered. Doesn't even have a wolf. Laughter rippled around the table. Lyra kept moving. The thing about being nobody was that you heard everything. Servants were furniture. Furniture didn't have ears. So the alphas spoke freely, and Lyra collected their secrets like coins in a fountain, worthless to her, maybe valuable to someone else someday. Not that she had anyone to tell. She had no pack, no family, no wolf, just the collar, the silence, and the endless work. Lyra! Headmistress Corvin's voice was sharp as a blade. The old woman appeared at her elbow, her own collar hidden beneath layers of gray lace. Corvin had been collared 40 years ago. She'd stopped fighting 39 years back. The king's table needs attending. Go. Lyra's stomach dropped. Headmistress, Now. She went. King Ronan Drake sat at the high table like a wolf among dogs. Even seated, he looked carved from violence, broad shoulders, scarred hands, eyes the color of winter storms. His dark hair was pulled back from a face that might have been handsome if it weren't so brutally cold. He was 32, unmarried, and known for two things: winning wars and showing no mercy. Every servant in the keep feared him. Lyra had avoided his table for 3 years running. Tonight, her luck had run out. She approached with her eyes on the floor, pitcher trembling slightly in her grip. She hated that tremor, hated the weakness. But proximity to power did that, reminded you how small you really were. Wine, Your Majesty? Her voice came out steady. Small miracle. He didn't answer, just pushed his goblet toward her. She poured, careful not to spill. The silence stretched. She could feel his gaze on her like a physical weight, and something in her chest stirred. Something she'd thought dead. What's your name? Lyra froze. Kings didn't ask servants their names. Lyra, Your Majesty. Look at me, Lyra. She shouldn't. Direct eye contact was forbidden for the collared. But something in his voice made disobedience impossible. She lifted her gaze. His eyes were colder than she'd expected. Sharper. They swept over her face like he was cataloging flaws, and she felt stripped bare despite being fully clothed in her servant's gray dress. How long have you been collared? 21 years, Your Majesty. Your entire life. Yes, Your Majesty. Why? The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked why. The collar explained everything. Omega, wolfless, worthless. I was born without a wolf, Your Majesty. Something flickered across his face. Not pity. Ronan Drake didn't do pity, but something close to curiosity. And they collared you as an infant? Yes, Your Majesty. Barbaric, he murmured, so quietly she almost missed it. Then Lord Garrett's voice cut through the moment like an axe through kindling. Your Majesty, you're wasting words on that creature. She's defective. Probably can't even breed properly. Laughter erupted around them. Lyra's face burned. She started to retreat, but Ronan's hand shot out and caught her wrist. Not hard, not threatening, but absolute. Did I dismiss you? No, Your Majesty. He released her, leaned back in his chair, and addressed the room with the lazy confidence of a man who'd never been challenged. Lord Garrett, when was the last time you said something intelligent? The laughter died. Garrett's face turned purple. I'm genuinely asking, Ronan continued, because I've been listening to you bray for 3 hours, and I haven't heard a single worthwhile thought emerge from that hole in your face. Someone choked on their drink. Tension crackled through the hall like lightning before a storm. Garrett stood, his chair scraping loud against stone. Your Majesty, with respect, sit down. 2 words, delivered flat. But the command in them was undeniable, and Garrett sat like a puppet with cut strings. His humiliation was a living thing, and Lyra knew she'd pay for it later. Servants always paid. Ronan turned back to her. You're dismissed, Lyra. She fled. The kitchens were chaos, steam and shouting and the clatter of pots. Lyra deposited her pitcher and tried to disappear into the work, but Corvin found her within minutes. You spoke to the king. He spoke to me, headmistress. Don't be clever. Corvin's face was lined with worry. Kings don't notice servants unless they're planning to break them. Keep your head down. Stay away from the high table. Yes, headmistress, but staying away was impossible. The conclave lasted 3 days, and every evening Lyra found herself assigned to the king's section. She kept her eyes down, her movements efficient, her presence minimal. Ronan didn't speak to her again. He just watched. On the 3rd night, Lord Garrett cornered her in the hallway outside the hall. He was drunk, swaying, his eyes mean. You think you're special? His hand locked around her throat, just above the collar. You think the king gives a damn about you? You're nothing, a broken toy. Lyra didn't fight. Fighting made it worse. She went still, let her mind drift somewhere else, waited for him to get bored. He shoved her into the wall instead. Her head cracked against stone and pain bloomed white-hot behind her eyes. Should have been drowned at birth, Garrett snarled. Waste of air. Then he was gone, ripped away by invisible hands. Lyra blinked through tears and saw Ronan holding Garrett by the throat, lifting him off the ground like he weighed nothing. The king's face was still cold, but his eyes burned. Touch her again, Ronan said quietly, and I'll remove your hands, then your arms. Then we'll see how you function as a stump. He dropped Garrett like garbage and turned to Lyra. Come with me. She followed because refusing wasn't an option. He led her through the keep's maze of corridors, past startled guards and gawking nobles, until they reached a private sitting room she'd only ever cleaned, never occupied. He closed the door. Sit. She sat on the edge of a velvet chair, hands folded in her lap, heart hammering. Kings didn't save servants. This had to be a game, a test, something with teeth. Ronan paced, agitation rolling off him in waves. How long has Garrett been hurting you? He hasn't, Your Majesty. Don't lie to me. I'm not lying. Tonight was the first time he touched me. But not the first time someone has. Silence. What could she say? That violence was part of being collared? That she'd learned to accept it the way she accepted winter cold or summer heat? Ronan stopped pacing, turned to face her. Who collared you? I don't know, Your Majesty. I was an infant. Someone made that decision. Someone looked at a baby and decided she was worthless. His voice carried an edge that might have been anger. That's not law. That's cruelty. Lyra said nothing. Agreement felt dangerous. Have you ever shifted? He asked. No, Your Majesty. I don't have a wolf. How do you know? I would feel it. Everyone says, everyone's an idiot. He crouched in front of her chair, bringing himself to eye level. This close, she could see the scars on his face, the gray threading his temples. Listen to me, Lyra. The collar suppresses shifting. It's designed to keep wolves contained. But if you were collared as an infant before your wolf could emerge, how would you know if she's there or not? Her breath caught. That's not possible. It's entirely possible. The collar doesn't eliminate the wolf. It just locks the door. He studied her face. Have you ever felt anything? Any instinct, any pull, any moment where you knew something you shouldn't? Yes. Tonight, when you looked at me. But she couldn't say that. Instead, she shook her head. Ronan stood, frustration evident in the set of his shoulders. The conclave ends tomorrow. After that, I'm returning to the capital. I want you to come with me. What? The word escaped before she could stop it. You heard me. Your Majesty, I can't. I belong to Ironvale Keep. Headmistress Corvin would never— I'm the king, Ronan said flatly. Corvin will do as I command. The question is whether you want to come. Want. As if servants got to want things. Why? Lyra asked. Because she had to know. Why would you take me? He looked at her for a long moment, expression unreadable. Because I think you're being wasted here. And because something tells me that Collar is hiding more than you realize. And if you're wrong, then you'll have a better life in the capital than you do here. He moved toward the door, paused with his hand on the handle. Think about it. I'll have your answer tomorrow. He left. Lyra sat in the velvet chair, mind spinning, heart racing, the impossible weight of choice pressing down on her like a mountain. She didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Her mind churned through possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last. Going with the king meant leaving everything she knew, even if everything she knew was suffering. It meant stepping into the unknown with a man she didn't understand and couldn't trust. But staying meant Garrett, Corvin. The endless gray monotony of servitude until she died forgotten in some corner of the keep. When dawn broke, she still didn't have an answer. The final day of the conclave was subdued. The alphas were hungover, irritable, conducting their last negotiations with all the grace of wounded bears. Lyra worked the morning shift, then the afternoon, exhaustion pulling at her bones. She was clearing the high table when she heard it. The wolfless Omega? You're joking, Lord Theron's voice, young, cruel, with a laugh like breaking glass. He sat 3 seats from Ronan, speaking just loud enough to be heard. I'm serious, Theron continued. I had a mate bond with her years ago. Rejected it, obviously. Can you imagine? A wolfless Omega for a mate? I'd rather die. Lyra's hand stilled on a plate. The hall seemed to tilt. You rejected a bond? Another lord asked. That's not possible. Bonds don't form with the wolfless. That's what I thought too. But I felt it. 6 years ago. She was 15, I was 20. The pull was there, weak as piss, but there. Theron laughed. I rejected it on the spot. Best decision I ever made. Look at me now, mated to a proper alpha female, 3 strong cubs, actual prospects. If I'd accepted that broken bond, I'd be chained to nothing. The words hit Lyra like fists. She remembered that day, remembered being 15 and feeling something tear inside her chest, something she couldn't name. She'd thought she was dying. Turned out she was just being discarded. Fascinating, Ronan said, his voice cutting through the noise. You rejected your fated mate, and you're proud of it. Theron missed the danger in his tone. Damn right. A man's got to make smart choices, Your Majesty. Can't let biology dictate. Lyra! She jerked her head up. Ronan was looking at her with those winter eyes, and she realized the entire hall had gone quiet. Is this true? Did Lord Theron reject a mate bond with you? Every instinct screamed at her to deny it, to protect herself, to fade back into invisibility. But something in Ronan's gaze demanded truth. Yes, Your Majesty. The hall erupted. Shocked voices, questions, denials. How could a wolfless Omega have a bond? Impossible. Unheard of. A trick. A lie. A mistake. Ronan stood, his presence crushing the noise like a boot on embers. If Lyra had a mate bond, then she has a wolf. She can't, Theron sputtered. She's never shifted, never shown any sign. Because she's been collared since birth, you absolute fool. Ronan's voice could have stripped paint. The collar suppresses the shift. If she was collared before her wolf could emerge, how would any of you know what she is? Silence. Heavy. Terrible. Ronan turned to Lyra. Come here. She moved on shaking legs, plates forgotten. When she stood before him, he reached out and touched the collar around her throat. His fingers were warm against the cold iron. Do you want this off? He asked quietly. I don't know what would happen. I do. His eyes held hers. The question is whether you're brave enough to find out. Was she? Bravery had never been an option. Survival was the only game, and bravery got you killed. But she'd spent 21 years being nothing. Maybe it was time to risk everything. Yes, she whispered. I want it off. Ronan's mouth curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. Good. He grasped the collar with both hands. Power rolled off him, alpha dominance so thick it made the air heavy, and he pulled. The iron shrieked. Ancient metal, spelled and sealed, designed to be permanent. It shattered. The pieces fell to the floor like broken promises, and Lyra gasped as something inside her chest exploded. Not pain, not exactly, more like every locked door in her soul blowing open at once. Power flooded through her veins, hot and wild and utterly foreign. Her bones ached. Her skin burned. The world tilted sideways and she fell to her knees, hands slamming into stone. Lyra, Ronan's voice, urgent. Breathe, let it come. But she didn't know how. The thing inside her was enormous, clawing its way to the surface, and she was terrified it would tear her apart. She tried to speak, to beg for help, but her throat was changing, her body reshaping. The shift took her like a storm. Bones cracked and reformed, muscles stretched. Her scream became a howl, and then she was no longer human. She was wolf, massive, silver-furred and huge, bigger than any wolf she'd ever seen. Power coursed through her like lightning, and when she opened her eyes, the world was sharper, brighter, more alive. The hall was silent. Every alpha had dropped to one knee, heads bowed, submission radiating from them like heat. All except Ronan. He stood before her, eyes wide with something that might have been awe. Gods, he breathed. You're a silver. She didn't know what that meant. Couldn't think past the overwhelming newness of this body, this strength, this wild thing inside her that had been caged for so long. Then Theron spoke, his voice shaking. That's impossible. Silvers are extinct. They've been dead for centuries. Clearly, Ronan said, never taking his eyes off Lyra. They're not. And that's when everything went to hell. Os. The attack came from the back of the hall. 3 wolves, dark-furred and snarling, launched themselves at Lyra with coordinated precision. Assassins. Fanatics. She didn't know which and didn't care because instinct took over and she moved. Faster than thought. Faster than fear. She caught the first attacker mid-leap, jaws closing around his throat, and the taste of his blood was copper and fury. The second slammed into her side, but she twisted, claws raking through flesh, her weight crushing him into the floor. The third hesitated, fatal mistake, and Ronan's wolf, midnight black and terrifying, tore out his spine. It was over in seconds. Lyra stood in the center of the carnage, panting, covered in blood that wasn't hers. Her wolf wanted more, wanted to fight, to run, to hunt. But the human part of her was screaming in horror at what she'd just done. She'd killed someone. 3 someones. The shift reversed without her permission. One moment wolf, the next human, naked and shaking on the blood-slicked floor. Ronan appeared at her side, wrapping his cloak around her shoulders, his voice low and steady. You did what you had to do. They would have killed you. I can't. You can. You did. And you'll do it again if necessary. He helped her to her feet, his grip firm. But right now we need to move. Those were purists, zealots who believe in the old bloodlines. They'll send more. Why? Her voice was raw. Why do they care about me? Ronan's expression was grim. Because silver wolves are legends. Alphas among alphas, the first bloodline. If word gets out that one still exists, every power structure in this kingdom will collapse. They'd rather see you dead than deal with that. I don't want to collapse anything. I just want... What? To go back to being a servant? His eyes flashed. That's not an option anymore, Lyra. You can't put the wolf back in the cage. He was right. She knew he was right. But the weight of it was crushing, freedom that felt like a sentence. Lord Theron stepped forward, his face pale. Your Majesty, with respect, the bond I rejected, it still exists. Technically, she's mine. Ronan turned on him with such viciousness that Theron stumbled back. You rejected the bond. You don't get to reclaim it now that she's valuable. Mate Law says you're an idiot who threw away his destiny. Ronan's voice dropped to something deadly. But if you want to challenge me for her, Theron, I'll meet you in the arena right now. Theron went white. No one challenged Ronan Drake and lived. I thought not. Ronan turned back to Lyra. You're coming with me to the capital, tonight. We leave within the hour. This isn't a request anymore. It's survival. Yours and mine. He held her gaze. Do you understand? She understood. The girl she'd been this morning was gone, burned away in the shift. What remained was something new, something terrifying, something that maybe, finally, had a chance. Yes, Lyra said. I understand. Ronan nodded once, then addressed the hall. The conclave is over. Everyone leaves. Now. They scattered like leaves in a storm, and Lyra stood in the ruins of her old life, wrapped in a king's cloak, wondering if freedom always felt this much like falling. The carriage rattled through the night like a coffin on wheels. Lyra sat across from Ronan, still wrapped in his cloak, her skin hypersensitive to every texture, every sound. The wolf inside her paced restlessly, wanting out, wanting to run. She pressed her palms against her thighs and tried to breathe. It gets easier, Ronan said without looking up from the report he was reading. The first few days are hell. Your senses are overloaded. Everything's too loud, too bright. Give it time. How much time? Depends on the wolf. He flipped a page. Most shifters adjust within a week, but you're not most shifters. Because I'm a silver. She still didn't understand what that meant. What does that make me? Ronan set down the report and met her eyes. Dangerous. Ancient. The silver bloodline died out 300 years ago during the Purge. They were the first wolves, the strongest, and they couldn't be controlled, so the other bloodlines united and wiped them out. Every last one. Or so we thought. But I didn't know I was. Doesn't matter. You exist. That makes you a threat to everyone who's built their power on the assumption that silvers are extinct. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Which is why we're not going to the capital. Lyra blinked. You said, I lied. The capital's crawling with purists, and half the noble houses would sell you to them for a decent price. We're going somewhere they can't reach you, somewhere remote enough to buy us time to figure out what the hell to do with you. Do with me? Anger flared hot in her chest. I'm not a problem to be solved. Yes, you are. His bluntness was brutal. You're the biggest problem I've encountered in 10 years of ruling. And if we don't handle this carefully, you'll start a war. The carriage hit a rut, and Lyra grabbed the seat to steady herself. Through the window, she could see darkness and trees rushing past. They'd been traveling for 3 hours, and she had no idea where they were. Where are we going? Blackwater Fortress, northern border. It's defensible, isolated, and staffed by soldiers who follow my orders without question. He picked up his report again. You'll be safe there while I clean up this mess. Clean up? She laughed, the sound sharp and wrong. You mean me? I'm the mess. You're a complication. There's a difference. Is there? She pulled the cloak tighter. This morning I was nobody. Now I'm a complication that might start a war. Feels like the same thing. Ronan's jaw tightened. This morning you were a slave. Now you're free. If you can't see the difference, you're more damaged than I thought. The words hit like a slap. Lyra turned away. Blinking back tears she refused to let fall. The wolf inside her snarled, wanting to fight, but the human part was still too scared. I didn't ask for this, she said quietly. No one asks for their wolf, you just get it. Ronan's voice softened slightly. But you can learn to use it. I'll make sure of that. Why? She looked at him again. Why do you care? He was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because someone should have cared 21 years ago when they put that collar on you. And because I've spent my entire reign trying to fix a broken system, you're proof it's worse than I thought. Before Lyra could respond, the carriage lurched violently and crashed onto its side. She slammed into the wall, Ronan's weight crushing against her as wood splintered and glass shattered. Shouts erupted outside, guards yelling, steel ringing, wolves snarling. Another attack. Ronan kicked out the door and hauled himself through the opening, pulling Lyra after him. They hit the ground rolling as arrows whistled overhead. The night was chaos. Their escort of 6 guards fighting against at least 20 attackers, all in the black leather of purist assassins. Stay behind me, Ronan ordered, already shifting. His clothes tore as his body expanded, bones cracking and reforming into the massive black wolf she'd seen in the hall. He launched into the fray without hesitation. Lyra pressed herself against the overturned carriage, heart hammering. The wolf inside her was screaming to join the fight, but she didn't know how. Didn't know how to control it, how to shift on command. She was useless. A purist broke through the line, heading straight for her with a silver blade raised. Lyra scrambled back, but there was nowhere to go. The blade came down. The wolf exploded out of her. No conscious thought, pure instinct. One moment human, the next a silver beast colliding with the assassin mid-strike. His blade skittered away harmlessly as her jaws closed around his arm and she tasted bone. He screamed. She didn't care. The wolf was in control now and it wanted blood. She tore through 2 more attackers before Ronan's howl cut through the violence. A command. A warning. Lyra's wolf hesitated, confused, and in that moment of distraction a purist drove a spear into her flank. Pain white-hot and devastating. She yelped and stumbled, the spear lodged deep. Her vision blurred. The wolf wanted to keep fighting, but the wound was too much. She shifted back without meaning to, suddenly human again, naked and bleeding in the dirt. Ronan appeared at her side in human form, blood-splattered and furious. He snapped the spear shaft and pulled it free in one brutal motion. Lyra screamed. "Breathe," he commanded, pressing his hands against the wound. "Your wolf will heal it. Let her." I don't know how." "Then learn, now." She closed her eyes and reached for the wolf. It was easier this time, like following a trail she'd walked before. The shift rippled through her and the pain receded as fur-covered skin and the wound began to close. By the time she was fully wolf again, the spear damage was reduced to a dull ache. The fight was over. Bodies littered the road. Purists mostly, but 3 of their guards were down. Ronan shifted back and started checking the survivors while Lyra stood on shaking legs, trying to process what had just happened. She'd killed again. Multiple someones this time, and it had felt right. Natural. Like her wolf had been waiting 21 years to do exactly this. That scared her more than the attacks. "Captain," Ronan called to the surviving guard leader. "How far to Blackwater?" 6 hours on foot, Your Majesty. The horses scattered. Then we walk. Gather the wounded. We move in 5 minutes. The captain saluted and moved off. Ronan approached Lyra, who was still in wolf form, not sure how to shift back deliberately. He crouched in front of her. "You need to learn control. Fast. The wolf can't drive every time." His voice was firm but not unkind. "Close your eyes. Find the place where you end and she begins. It's not a wall. It's a door. Open it when you want her. Close it when you don't." Lyra tried, felt for that boundary inside herself. It was messy, blurred, like oil mixing with water, but she found it eventually, a seam in her consciousness, and when she pulled, the wolf receded and her human body returned. She was getting faster at it. That should have been encouraging. Instead, it just made her feel more out of control. Ronan handed her a spare cloak from one of the dead guards. "We need to move. Can you walk?" "Yes." They set out into the forest, leaving the bodies behind. The night was cold and the trees pressed close. Lyra's bare feet found every sharp rock and broken branch, but she didn't complain. Complaining was servant behavior. She wasn't a servant anymore. She wasn't sure what she was. An hour into the march, Captain Derek fell back to walk beside Ronan. "Your Majesty, with respect, we're being hunted. The purists knew our route, our timing. Someone fed them information." "I'm aware." "Then you know we can't trust anyone at Blackwater. If there's a spy in your inner circle, then we deal with them when we find them." Ronan's voice was ice. "Right now our priority is getting her somewhere defensible." Derek glanced at Lyra with poorly concealed distrust. "Is she worth this many lives, Your Majesty?" Lyra expected Ronan to hesitate, to calculate, to weigh her value against his losses. But he didn't even slow down. "Yes," he said flatly. "She is. Any other questions, Captain?" "No, Your Majesty." They walked in silence after that. Lyra felt the weight of every dead guard, every risk Ronan was taking. For her. For someone he'd known less than a day. It didn't make sense. Kings didn't throw away resources for strangers. Unless she wasn't a stranger. Unless the silver wolf made her something else. Something valuable enough to die for. The thought sat in her stomach like a stone. Dawn was breaking when they finally saw Blackwater Fortress rising from the cliffs ahead. It was aptly named, black stone walls looming over dark water, built into the mountainside like a scar. Defensive, brutal, unwelcoming. Lyra had never seen anything more beautiful. Inside meant walls, guards, safety, Inside meant she might actually survive this. They were 50 yards from the gate when wolves poured out of the fortress. Not guards. Attackers. The gate was already compromised. Run! Ronan shoved Lyra toward the tree line, but it was too late. They were surrounded. At least 40 wolves, all bearing the white mark of the purest order on their shoulders. This wasn't a raid. This was an execution. At the center of the pack stood a man in human form, older than Ronan, with gray-streaked hair and eyes like frozen lakes. He smiled when he saw them. "Your Majesty, how kind of you to deliver the abomination directly to us." Ronan stepped in front of Lyra. "Commander Voss, I should have known you'd turn traitor eventually." "Traitor?" Voss laughed. "I'm a patriot. The silver bloodline is a disease. It nearly destroyed our world once. I won't let it happen again." "She's one woman. She's a symbol. A crack in the foundation. If word spreads that silvers still exist, every Omega in every territory will start wondering if they're secretly powerful. The hierarchy will collapse. Chaos will reign." Voss drew a silver blade. "I'm saving the kingdom, Your Majesty, even if it means killing you to do it." "You're insane." "I'm practical." Voss gestured, and the wolves advanced. Ronan shifted instantly, his black wolf massive and terrifying. Lyra did the same, her silver form drawing gasps even from the purists. They might want her dead, but they couldn't help their instinctive submission to a silver's presence. The fight was brief and brutal. Ronan tore through 5 wolves before they brought him down through sheer numbers. Lyra fought with everything she had, but she was untrained, exhausted, and outnumbered 20-1. When a net of silver chain fell over her, burning her skin, she collapsed with a yelp. Voss approached her in human form, blade in hand. "I'll make it quick. More mercy than you deserve." Lyra shifted back, the chains searing her flesh, and looked him in the eye. "You're afraid of me." "I'm cautious." "No, you're terrified." She could smell it on him under the bravado. "Because you know what I am, what I could become, and it scares you so badly you'd betray your own king." Voss's hand tightened on the blade. Last words, abomination? She had 1,000 things she could say, pleas, curses, defiance. But only one thing mattered. "I reject the rejection." The words came from somewhere deep, somewhere instinctive. She didn't even know what they meant until she felt it. The mate bond with Theron, dormant for 6 years, suddenly snapping tight like a rope pulled taut. Miles away, Theron screamed. Lyra felt it through the bond, felt his shock and pain as the rejection he'd made was forcibly reversed. The bond flooded open and power poured through it into her. Not much. Theron was weak, but it was enough. The silver chain shattered. Lyra shifted mid-lunge, her silver wolf catching Voss by the throat before he could react. She bit down and felt his windpipe collapse, tasted his blood, felt his life end between her jaws. The other purists froze, uncertain. Their leader was dead. The silver was free. And she was looking at them with eyes that promised violence. "Run," Lyra growled, the word distorted by her wolf's vocal cords but understandable. They ran. She let them go and immediately shifted back to check on Ronan. He was still breathing, barely, covered in wounds and surrounded by dead wolves. She dragged him away from the carnage, her own injuries screaming, and collapsed beside him in the dirt. "That was stupid," Ronan rasped. "Rejecting a rejection. Do you have any idea? Saved your life. Tied yourself to Theron. He'll feel everything you feel. Use it against you." Ronan coughed blood. "Stupid? You're welcome." Lyra pressed her hands against his worst wound, trying to stop the bleeding. Her wolf wanted to heal him, but she didn't know how. "Don't die." "Not planning to." His eyes found hers. "But Lyra, what you did, reversing a rejection, that's not normal. That's not possible." "Seems like a lot of impossible things are possible now." He almost smiled. "Fair point." They lay there in the growing daylight, 2 broken people surrounded by bodies, waiting for help or death, whichever came first. Hoofbeats echoed in the distance. Lyra tensed, but Ronan squeezed her hand. "Ours. I called for backup before we left Ironvale." "You knew this would happen." "I suspected. Voss has been problematic for years. I just needed him to show his hand. Ronan's breathing was getting shallower. The fortress is compromised. We can't stay here. Then where? Capital. Only option now. Lock down the palace, call a tribunal, root out every purist sympathizer. He coughed again, harder this time. And figure out what to do with you before someone else tries to kill you. You mean before someone succeeds? That too. The backup arrived. 30 royal guards led by a woman with steel gray hair and a face like carved granite. She took one look at the scene and started barking orders. Within minutes, Ronan was being tended by healers, and Lyra was surrounded by suspicious guards who couldn't decide if she was a victim or a threat. The gray-haired woman approached her. "I'm General Cade." "You're the Silver?" "I'm Lyra." "That's not what I asked." Lyra met her stare. "Yes, I'm the Silver." Cade studied her for a long moment. "You killed Commander Voss." "He was trying to kill me." "Fair enough." Cade turned to her soldiers. "Get her cleaned up and dressed. She rides with His Majesty back to the capital. And someone find out where the hell Theron Blackwood is. Apparently they're bonded now, and we need to know whose side he's on." They found Theron 6 hours later, unconscious in his estate, his wolf driven mad by the forced bond reversal. When he woke, he was coherent enough to scream threats about reclaiming what was his, about teaching Lyra her place, about making her pay for the humiliation. Ronan had him thrown in the palace dungeons to await trial. Lyra watched from a tower window as Theron was dragged through the courtyard in chains, still raging. She felt nothing through the bond. No sympathy, no regret, just cold satisfaction that he was finally the one being collared. "Enjoying the view?" Ronan appeared beside her, bandaged but upright. His healers were good. "Is that wrong?" "No, it's honest." He leaned against the windowsill. "The tribunal convenes tomorrow. They'll want to examine you, test you, determine if you're a threat. And if they decide I am, then we have a problem." He looked at her seriously. "Some will push for execution. Others will want you collared again. A few might suggest exile." "What do you want?" Ronan was quiet for a moment. "I want to know why you exist. Silver wolves are extinct. Your parents should have been extinct. So where did you come from?" "I don't know. I was left at Ironvale as an infant. No records, no family. Someone knew what you were. Someone hid you." His eyes narrowed. "Which means someone out there has answers, and I'm going to find them." "Why does it matter?" "Because if there's one Silver, there might be more. And if there are more, everything changes." He pushed off from the windowsill. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be hell." He was right. The tribunal was held in the Grand Hall, packed with nobles and officials all wanting to see the impossible creature. Lyra stood in the center of the room in a simple gray dress, feeling every eye on her like a physical weight. The bond with Theron pulsed in the background, his anger bleeding through despite the distance. High Chancellor Bryn presided, an ancient man with a voice like grinding stone. "Lyra Vane, you stand accused of being a silver wolf, a bloodline declared extinct and forbidden by royal decree. How do you plead?" "I didn't choose to be born." Her voice carried through the hall. "How can I plead to something I had no control over?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Bryn's expression didn't change. "The law is clear. Silver bloodlines are too dangerous to exist. The purge was necessary." "The purge was genocide," Ronan said from his throne. "And this woman is not responsible for the crimes of her ancestors. She was collared as an infant, enslaved for 21 years. If anything, she's a victim. Or she's a threat waiting to emerge." Lord Carmine stood, his face flushed. "Your Majesty, with respect, we cannot allow sentiment to cloud judgment. The Silver bloodline nearly destroyed our civilization. One survived the purge, and now she's bonded to a noble lord, influencing our king. This is exactly how it starts." "How what starts?" Lyra asked. "The corruption, the domination. Silvers can't help themselves. They're born to rule, to subjugate. It's in your nature." Carmine pointed at her. "You've already killed a dozen people in 3 days. How many more before you decide you're entitled to the throne?" "I killed people who were trying to murder me." "So you say. But we only have your word." The tribunal descended into chaos. Arguments erupted, accusations flew, and Lyra stood in the center of it all, feeling more trapped than she ever had in the collar. At least as a servant, she'd been invisible. Now she was a spectacle, a threat, a problem that needed solving. Ronan stood, his alpha presence crushing the noise into silence. Enough. The tribunal will recess for 1 hour while I consult with my advisors. Lyra will remain in protective custody. Anyone who attempts to harm her will answer to me personally. He swept from the room and his guards escorted Lyra to a secure chamber. She sank onto a bench, exhausted, while 2 guards stood watch at the door. 30 minutes later, the door burst open and Theron stumbled in, guards struggling to hold him back. The bond flared hot and violent. "You destroyed my life," he screamed at her. "I had everything, a mate, cubs, respect, and you took it all with your selfish... You rejected me first." Lyra was on her feet. "You threw me away like garbage. Don't you dare pretend you're the victim here." "I made a smart choice. You were worthless." "Then why does it hurt so much now that I took that choice back?" She could feel his pain through the bond, sharp and real. "You're angry because I'm not worthless anymore. Because now the bond you rejected is with someone powerful and you realize what you lost." Theron lunged for her, but the guards caught him. He fought against their grip, tears streaming down his face. "I hate you. I hate everything you've become." "Good. We're even." They dragged him out, still screaming. Lyra sat back down, shaking. The bond pulsed with Theron's rage, and her own growing certainty that she'd made a terrible mistake reversing the rejection. She'd gained power but lost any chance at peace. The tribunal reconvened an hour later. Ronan addressed the assembly with cold authority. "The Crown has made a decision. Lyra Vane will undergo the trial of sovereignty." Gasps erupted. Lyra didn't know what that meant, but the fear in the room told her it was bad. High Chancellor Bryn stood slowly. "Your Majesty, that trial hasn't been invoked in 200 years. The mortality rate is irrelevant. If Lyra survives, her right to exist is proven beyond question. If she doesn't, the matter resolves itself." Ronan's eyes found hers across the hall. "The trial begins at dawn. Prepare yourself." The session ended and Lyra was escorted back to her chambers. She'd barely closed the door when Ronan appeared through a side entrance. "What is the trial of sovereignty?" she demanded. "Single combat. You versus your accuser in wolf form. Fight to submission or death." He looked tired. "Lord Carmine invoked his right to challenge. I couldn't refuse without looking weak." "Carmine's an alpha. I've been a wolf for 3 days." "I know. So you're sending me to die. I'm giving you a chance to prove you deserve to live." Ronan stepped closer. "Carmine's strong, but he's arrogant. Use that. Fight smart, not hard. And whatever you do, don't hold back. The tribunal needs to see what you really are." "What I really am is scared." "Good. Fear keeps you alive." He moved toward the door. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow you fight for your future." He left. Lyra stood alone in the room, the weight of tomorrow pressing down like a mountain. Outside her window, the city sprawled in the darkness, full of people who wanted her dead. And at dawn, she'd have to prove them wrong or die trying. Sleep didn't come. Lyra spent the night pacing her chamber like a caged animal, the wolf inside her restless and hungry. Every sound made her jump. Footsteps in the corridor, wind against the windows, the distant howl of some wolf in the city below. The bond with Theron throbbed like an infected wound, his hatred bleeding through in waves that made her nauseous. She tried to eat the food they'd brought, but everything tasted like ash. Tried to practice shifting, but her body was too wired, too uncertain. The wolf would come when called, but she couldn't hold it, couldn't control the transformation. It happened to her, not because of her. That was going to get her killed. Around 3 a.m, a knock came at the door. Lyra tensed, but it was just a servant, an older woman with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a braid. "Miss Vane? I'm here to help you prepare." "Prepare for what? Dying?" The woman's mouth twitched. "For fighting. There's a difference." She set down a bundle wrapped in oiled cloth. "General Cade sent these. Said you'd need proper clothes, not that dress." Lyra unwrapped the bundle and found leather pants, a fitted tunic, and boots that actually fit. Simple, practical, designed for movement. She dressed quickly while the servant waited. "You were a servant once," the woman said quietly. "At Ironvale." "How did you know?" "The way you move, the way you watch doors." She smiled sadly. I wore a collar for 30 years before the old king freed me. Became a cook in the palace kitchens. Not much of a life, but better than what I had. Lyra sat on the bed to lace her boots. Did you have a wolf? No, just got lucky. The king needed kitchen staff, and I was cheap. She moved to the window, looking out at the pre-dawn darkness. But you're different. You've got power now, real power. Don't waste it being scared. I don't know how not to be scared. Then be scared and fight anyway. That's what survival is. The woman turned back to her. Lord Carmine's strong, but he's old. 53 years as a wolf. He relies on experience. You're new. Use that. Be unpredictable. You think I can win? I think you can surprise him. That might be enough. She headed for the door, paused with her hand on the handle. Whatever happens in that arena, don't let them make you small again. You're not a servant anymore. Make them remember that. She left. Lyra sat in the silence, trying to believe her words, trying to find some core of courage in the terror. The wolf stirred inside her, impatient, ready. At least one of them was. Dawn came gray and cold. The guards arrived to escort her to the arena of judgment, an ancient stone pit in the heart of the palace grounds where trials had been held for centuries. Lyra walked through corridors lined with nobles and officials, all watching her with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. No one spoke to her. She was already dead in their eyes. The arena was circular, 50 feet across, surrounded by stone walls 20 feet high. Seating ringed the top for spectators. It was already packed, hundreds of faces staring down like vultures waiting for a corpse. Lyra was led down stone steps into the pit itself, the sand under her feet dark with old blood. Across from her, Lord Carmine entered through the opposite gate. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair and the confident walk of someone who'd never lost a fight. His eyes found hers, and he smiled. Not kind, not cruel, just certain. High Chancellor Bryn stood at the edge of the arena, his voice magically amplified to reach every spectator. The trial of sovereignty will now commence. Lord Carmine has accused Lyra Vane of being a threat to the kingdom by nature of her silver bloodline. She has chosen to defend her right to exist through combat. The rules are simple. Fight in wolf form until one submits or dies. There is no interference. There is no mercy. May the strongest prove their worth. Lyra's heart hammered against her ribs. Her hands were shaking. The wolf inside her pushed forward, sensing the fight, wanting it. But the human part was still terrified, still convinced this was suicide. Shift, Bryn commanded. Carmine transformed instantly, his wolf huge and scarred, gray-furred with eyes like amber. He'd done this 1,000 times. It was as natural as breathing. Lyra reached for her wolf, and nothing happened. Panic spiked through her. She tried again, fumbling for that door Ronan had described, but her fear was blocking it. The wolf was there, but she couldn't reach it. Carmine lunged. Instinct took over. The wolf exploded out of her in pure panic, and she met his charge with her own. They collided in the center of the arena with a crack that echoed off stone. Carmine was bigger, stronger, more experienced. He used his weight to drive her into the sand, jaws snapping for her throat. Lyra twisted away, his teeth grazing her shoulder instead of her neck. She kicked out with her hind legs and caught him in the ribs. He grunted but didn't let go, his claws raking her side. Blood soaked into the sand. The crowd roared. She'd been fighting for 30 seconds, and she was already losing. Carmine drove her against the wall, pinning her there with his bulk. His jaws closed around her throat, not hard enough to kill, just enough to remind her he could. The message was clear: submit or die. Through the bond, Lyra felt Theron's savage joy. He wanted her dead. Wanted her humiliated. Wanted her to pay for reversing the rejection and ruining his perfect life. That rage gave her strength. Lyra let her wolf go limp, feigning submission. Carmine's grip loosened slightly, anticipating victory. In that half-second of distraction, she twisted and sank her teeth into his front leg. Bone cracked. He howled and released her, stumbling back. She didn't wait, didn't think, just attacked with everything she had, teeth and claws and desperate fury. Carmine was stronger, but she was faster, driven by 21 years of suppressed rage. She tore into him, not with skill, but with violence, each bite a fuck you to every person who'd called her worthless. Carmine rallied and threw her off. She hit the sand hard, the impact knocking the air from her lungs. He limped toward her, blood dripping from his injured leg, his eyes promising pain. You fight like a rabid dog, he growled, the words distorted but understandable. No honor, no control. I fight like someone who wants to live, Lyra snarled back. He laughed and lunged again. This time she was ready. She rolled under his charge and came up behind him, her jaws closing on his hind leg. She bit down with everything she had and felt tendons tear. Carmine collapsed with a roar. The crowd's noise changed pitch. Uncertainty now. Fear, maybe. The old lord was on the ground and the silver was still standing. Carmine shifted back to human form, his leg a mangled mess. I yield. The words hung in the air. Lyra stood over him in wolf form, breathing hard, blood dripping from a dozen wounds. She'd won. Somehow, impossibly, she'd won. The trial is concluded, Bryn announced, his voice tight. Lyra Vane has proven her right to exist. The accusations are dismissed. The crowd erupted, some cheering, more booing. Lyra shifted back to human form, swaying on her feet. A healer rushed into the arena to tend to Carmine. No one rushed to help her. Ronan appeared at the arena's edge, his expression unreadable. Well fought. I got lucky. Luck is a skill. Take the win. He gestured to the guards. Get her to the healers, and someone bring Theron Blackwood to the throne room. We need to address the bond situation. They escorted her to the palace infirmary, where a healer, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and gentle hands, cleaned her wounds and wrapped them in bandages soaked with healing herbs. The injuries weren't deep. Her wolf had already started knitting flesh back together. You're healing faster than normal, the healer observed. Silver bloodline trait? I don't know. Maybe. Interesting. The healer finished the last bandage. You'll be sore for a few days, but you'll live. Try not to fight any more lords this week. Lyra almost smiled. I'll do my best. An hour later, she was summoned to the throne room. She walked in still wearing the healer's bandages, her body aching but her head clearer than it had been in days. The room was packed with nobles and officials, all watching her with new wariness. She wasn't a curiosity anymore. She was a threat they couldn't dismiss. Ronan sat on his throne, Theron kneeling in chains at the base of the dais. The younger man's face was bruised. Someone had hit him recently, and his eyes burned with hatred when he saw Lyra. You destroyed everything, Theron spat. My mate left me. My pack rejected me. My own cubs won't speak to me. All because you couldn't accept being nothing. I didn't do this to you, Lyra said quietly. You did it to yourself 6 years ago when you rejected the bond. I just took back what you threw away. You had no right. I had every right. You don't get to discard someone and then complain when they move on. Her voice rose despite herself. You wanted me dead. You wanted me gone. Well, I'm still here. Deal with it. Ronan stood, cutting off Theron's response. The bond between you is problematic. It gives Theron access to Lyra's emotions, her location, her vulnerabilities. As long as it exists, she's compromised. Then break it, Lyra said. I don't want to be tied to him. It's not that simple. Mate bonds can't be broken, only rejected. And since you reversed his rejection, the bond is locked. Ronan looked between them. There is one option, completion. The word hit like a physical blow. Lyra's stomach dropped. No. If the bond is consummated, it becomes permanent, but also stable. Theron would lose the ability to influence you through it. You'd be equals. I said no. Lyra, I would rather die than let him touch me. She turned to Theron. You threw me away when I was worthless. You don't get me back now that I'm not. Theron's laugh was bitter. You think I want you? You're broken, damaged. The bond is a curse that's ruining my life. Then reject it again. I can't. He surged to his feet, chains rattling. Don't you understand? You reversed my rejection. The bond won't let me reject it a second time. I'm stuck with you until one of us dies. Silence fell over the throne room. Lyra stared at him, processing the implications. She'd thought reversing the rejection gave her power over him. Instead, she'd chained them both together in mutual misery. There has to be another way, she said. There is, a new voice spoke from the back of the room. Everyone turned. An old woman stepped forward, her face lined with age, but her eyes sharp as broken glass. She wore the robes of a keeper, scholars who maintained the old laws and histories. The bond of severance, ancient ritual, very dangerous, but it can break a mate bond permanently. Ronan's eyes narrowed. Keeper Maris, I thought that ritual was forbidden. It is, for good reason. The failure rate is 70%. Those who attempt it and fail typically go mad or die. Maris approached the dais, her gaze fixed on Lyra. But you're a silver. Your bloodline created that ritual in the first place. You might actually survive it. What does it involve? Lyra asked. Both parties enter a shared mindscape, a mental space where the bond manifests physically. You fight the bond itself. If you win, it severs completely. If you lose, it consumes you both. That's insane, Theron said. I'm not risking my life for it. You don't have a choice. Ronan's voice was iron. The bond makes Lyra vulnerable, and you're using it to sabotage her. Either you attempt the severance, or I execute you for treason. Pick one. Theron went pale. That's not a choice. No, it's a consequence. Ronan turned to Maris. How long to prepare the ritual? 3 days. I'll need rare herbs, a consecrated space, and both participants willing. She looked at Lyra. Are you willing, child? Lyra thought about being tied to Theron forever, about feeling his hatred every day, about him having access to her thoughts, her feelings, her weaknesses, about never being truly free. Yes, I'm willing. Then we begin preparations immediately. Maris bowed to Ronan. Your Majesty, I'll need access to the palace archives. The ritual specifications are detailed but complex. You'll have whatever you need. Ronan dismissed the court with a wave. Everyone out, except Lyra. The throne room emptied. Theron was dragged away, still protesting. When the doors closed, Ronan descended from the dais and approached her. You don't have to do this. We can find another way. There is no other way. You said it yourself, the bond compromises me. Lyra met his eyes. I spent 21 years being controlled by that collar. I won't spend the rest of my life being controlled by this bond. The ritual could kill you, so could doing nothing. At least this way I'm choosing the risk. She paused. Why do you care so much? You barely know me. Ronan was quiet for a long moment. Then, because you remind me of someone. My sister. She was collared when she was 7 for being too wild, too aggressive. They said she was dangerous. She died 3 years later. Never shifted. Never got to be who she was meant to be. His jaw tightened. I couldn't save her. But maybe I can save you. The admission hung between them, raw and honest. Lyra didn't know what to say. Sorry felt inadequate. Thank you felt wrong. So she just nodded, and Ronan seemed to understand. Get some rest. The next 3 days are going to be difficult. She returned to her chambers, but rest was impossible. The bond pulsed with Theron's anger and fear, keeping her wired and tense. She tried to meditate, to separate herself from his emotions, but they bled through anyway, connected, trapped. On the second day, Maris came to examine her. The old keeper brought strange instruments, crystals that glowed when held near Lyra's chest, herbs that smoked purple when burned, ancient texts written in languages Lyra didn't recognize. The bond is strong, Maris observed, making notes. Stronger than it should be for such a weak alpha. Your bloodline is amplifying it. Can I still sever it? Theoretically, but the bond will fight back. It doesn't want to die. Maris set down her instruments. In the mindscape, the bond will take physical form. Usually it appears as chains or ropes, but with a silver wolf involved, it might manifest as something more aggressive. Like what? A beast, a storm, a maze. The bond reflects the relationship. Yours with Theron is built on rejection, hatred, and pain. Expect something ugly. Great. Lyra rubbed her temples. How do I fight it? You don't, not directly. The bond feeds on conflict. Fighting it makes it stronger. Maris leaned forward. You have to let it go. Release the anger, the hurt, the need for revenge. When you stop feeding it, it starves. And when it's weak enough, you can cut it. That's it? Just let go? Simple concept, nearly impossible execution. Maris smiled grimly. Most people can't do it. Their pain is too deep, their need for validation too strong. They'd rather die connected than live alone. I've lived alone my entire life. No, you've lived controlled. There's a difference. And the keeper gathered her tools. We perform the ritual tomorrow at midnight. Fast for 24 hours beforehand. Drink only water. And say goodbye to anyone you care about. just in case. She left. Lyra sat in her chamber, processing. Say goodbye. The only person she remotely cared about was Ronan, and she wasn't sure that counted. He cared about his dead sister's ghost. Lyra was just a convenient vessel for his guilt, but that night he came to her room anyway, carrying a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. Thought you might want company. I'm supposed to be fasting. The fast starts at dawn. You've got 8 hours. He poured them both a glass. Besides, liquid doesn't count. They drank in silence for a while, sitting on opposite ends of the room. The wine was good, rich and dark and warming. Lyra hadn't tasted wine since becoming a wolf. It hit harder now. Tell me about your sister, she said eventually. Ronan's expression shuddered. Why? Because you're helping me because of her. I should know who she was. He drank half his glass before answering. Her name was Kira. She was 7 when they collared her, 10 when she died. Fever took her. Could have been saved, but they didn't bother treating a collared servant properly. By the time I found out, it was too late. How old were you? 14. Old enough to know better, too young to do anything about it. He refilled his glass. I was being groomed to take the throne, told to ignore distractions, focus on my duties. Kira was a distraction. I listened. I obeyed. And she died alone in some servants' quarters while I practiced swordplay. That wasn't your fault, wasn't it? I had power, resources. I could have fought for her. Instead, I let the system eat her alive. His eyes met hers. I won't make that mistake again. I'm not Kira. No, you're stronger. You fight back. But that doesn't mean you don't deserve protection. He stood, moving to the window. If the ritual fails tomorrow, if you die, I need you to know it wasn't for nothing. What you've done, surviving, fighting, proving the hierarchy wrong, it matters. You matter. Lyra's throat tightened. No one had ever said that to her before. Not once in 21 years. Thank you, she managed. He nodded and left without another word. Lyra finished her wine alone, then lay in bed watching the ceiling and trying not to think about dying tomorrow. The day of the ritual came gray and cold. Lyra fasted as instructed, drinking only water, her stomach cramping with hunger and nerves. Maris came at noon to escort her to the consecrated chamber, a circular room deep in the palace's oldest wing, the walls carved with symbols that hurt to look at. Theron was already there, pale and shaking. The chains were gone, but he looked more trapped than ever. I don't want to do this, he said when he saw her. Neither do I, but here we are. Maris directed them to sit facing each other in the center of a circle drawn in salt and crushed silver. Candles burned at cardinal points. The air smelled like ozone and old magic. The ritual will pull you both into the mindscape, Maris explained. What happens there is beyond my control. Remember, don't fight the bond, let it go. And if you feel yourself slipping, call for each other. The bond connects you. Use that. I'm not calling for him, Lyra said. Then you'll die. Your choice. Maris began chanting in that ancient language, her voice resonating off the walls. The candles flared, the circle started glowing. Lyra felt the world tilt, and then she was falling. She landed hard on stone. Not the ritual chamber. Somewhere else. Somewhere dark and vast and wrong. She pushed herself to her feet and looked around. The mindscape was a wasteland. Black sand stretched to the horizon under a red sky. In the distance, something massive moved. A shape too large to comprehend, made of chains and shadows and screaming. The bond. Theron appeared beside her, gasping. What is that? Our connection. What we made between us. Lyra started walking toward it. Come on. Are you insane? That thing will kill us. Then we die. But at least we tried. She didn't wait for him. Just walked toward the screaming darkness, her heart hammering but her feet steady. The bond noticed her. The chains writhed and reached, and she saw now what they were made of. Memories. Every moment of pain, every rejection, every cruel word. Her at 15 feeling the bond snap into place. Theron laughing with his friends about the worthless Omega. Her reversal, his rage. Their mutual hatred compressed into a living thing that wanted to devour them both. Let it go, Maris's voice echoed from nowhere. Release it. How? How was she supposed to let go of 21 years of suffering? Of being discarded and humiliated? The anger was the only thing that had kept her alive. But maybe that was the point. Maybe she didn't need it anymore. Lyra stopped walking, closed her eyes, and thought about the servant in Ironvale who told her not to waste her power being scared, about Ronan saying she mattered, about the fact that she'd won the trial, survived the attacks, become something more than the caller had allowed. She didn't need Theron's rejection to define her, didn't need his hatred to fuel her. She could just be Lyra, whoever that was. The bond sensed her slipping away and attacked, chains wrapped around her, pulling her toward the screaming darkness. Theron yelled something, but she couldn't hear him. The memories flooded in, every moment of pain concentrated into a single point of agony, and then she felt it, a hand grabbing hers. Theron, pulling against the chains. "I'm sorry," he screamed. "I'm sorry I rejected you. I'm sorry I was cruel. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to see what you were." The chains faltered. Lyra opened her eyes and saw Theron crying, his face twisted with genuine remorse. "I don't forgive you," she said. "I know, but I needed to say it." He pulled harder. "Let go, Lyra, please. Let me go. Let us both go." She looked at the bond, at the mass of pain and hatred that connected them, and she made a choice. She let go. The chains shattered, the bond screamed and collapsed into dust. The mindscape dissolved, and Lyra was back in the ritual chamber, gasping on the floor, her chest feeling hollow and light. Theron lay across from her, unconscious but breathing. Maris knelt between them, checking pulses. "It worked," the keeper said, sounding shocked. "You actually severed it." Lyra pressed a hand to her chest where the bond had lived. Nothing. Just empty space where Theron's emotions had been. Free. Finally, completely free. She started laughing, couldn't help it, relief and exhaustion and sheer disbelief that she'd survived. Maris helped her sit up. "How do you feel?" "Like I can breathe for the first time ever." "Good. That's good." Maris glanced at Theron. "He'll wake in a few hours. Probably traumatized. But alive. Will he be okay?" "Eventually. You both will." The keeper stood. "Rest now. You've earned it." Lyra was escorted back to her chambers where she collapsed into bed and slept for 16 hours straight. When she woke, the sun was shining through her window and General Cade was sitting in a chair beside her bed. "Morning, sleeping beauty." Lyra sat up, groggy. "What time is it?" "Nearly noon. You've been out a while." Cade set down the book she'd been reading. "Thought you'd want to know. Theron Blackwood left the capital this morning, headed back to his territory, said he needed time to think." "Is he okay?" "Physically, yes. Mentally, that's going to take longer." Cade studied her. "The bond's really gone?" "Completely." "How does it feel?" Lyra thought about it. Quiet. Like someone turned off a noise I'd gotten so used to I forgot it was there. "Good." Cade stood. "The king wants to see you when you're ready. No rush, but there's something he needs to discuss." An hour later, Lyra walked into Ronan's private office. He was reviewing reports, his desk covered in papers and maps. When he saw her, he set everything aside. "You look better." "I feel better." She sat in the chair across from him. "Cade said you needed to talk." "Yes, about your future." He leaned back. "The tribunal accepted your right to exist, but that doesn't make you safe. The purists are still out there. More will come." "I know. You need training, real training, how to fight, how to use your wolf, how to navigate politics. You're powerful, but you're raw. That makes you dangerous to yourself as much as anyone else." "What are you suggesting?" Ronan pulled out a document and slid it across the desk. "I'm creating a new position, Royal Protector. Your job would be to hunt down purist cells, protect the crown, and serve as proof that the old bloodlines haven't disappeared." He met her eyes. "You'd answer only to me. Full resources, full authority, and full danger." Lyra looked at the document. It was a contract, a real offer, a future that wasn't servitude. "Why me?" "Because you're the only silver wolf in existence. Because you've survived things that should have killed you. And because I trust you." He paused. "You don't have to decide now. Take time. Think about it." She didn't need time. She'd spent 21 years being nobody, being powerless, being invisible. Never again. "I accept." Ronan smiled, genuine warmth reaching his eyes for the first time. Good. Welcome to the mess. They shook hands, and Lyra felt the weight of choice settle over her. Not a collar this time. Not chains. Just responsibility. Purpose. A chance to matter. Outside the window, the city sprawled in afternoon light. Somewhere out there, enemies were planning, plotting, preparing to strike. Let them come. This time, she'd be ready. She was about to stand when the window exploded inward. Glass shattered everywhere as a massive black wolf crashed through, followed by 3 more. Purest assassins, in the palace, in the king's office. Ronan shifted instantly, but one wolf was already on him, driving him into the desk. The others turned on Lyra. She shifted without thinking, her silver wolf erupting out with a snarl. The fight was brief and vicious. One assassin went down with his throat torn out. The second caught her in the ribs with his claws, but she twisted and broke his neck. The third hesitated, and Ronan's black wolf tore him apart. Silence fell. The office was destroyed, furniture broken, paper scattered, blood everywhere. Ronan shifted back, breathing hard. They're getting bolder. How did they get into the palace? I don't know, but we're going to find out. He moved to the door and yelled for guards. Lock down the palace. Search every room. I want whoever helped them inside found and executed. Lyra shifted back, her newest wounds already starting to heal. Her ribs ached, but it wasn't serious. The wolf's healing was getting faster. Guards poured in, followed by General Cade. Her face went white when she saw the carnage. Your Majesty, are you hurt? We're fine. The assassins are dead, but there's a traitor in the palace. Start with anyone who had access to my schedule today. Ronan's voice was ice. And double the guard on Lyra. She's officially a target now. Yes, Your Majesty. As Cade organized the response, Ronan turned to Lyra. Blood streaked his face and his eyes burned with cold fury. This is what your life will be now. Attacks, betrayals, people trying to kill you every day. Are you sure you want this? Lyra looked at the dead assassins, at the destroyed office, at the blood on her hands. Yes, she said, I'm sure. Because for the first time in her life, someone was trying to kill her not because she was worthless, but because she was dangerous, and that felt like power. The traitor was found 3 hours later hanging from a noose in the servant quarters. Lord Valen, a minor noble who'd served in the palace guard for 12 years. His suicide note confessed everything. The bribes from purist agents, the information he'd sold, the locations of secret passages he'd revealed. But what caught Ronan's attention was the final line. There are more of us. You cannot stop what's coming. Lyra read the note over his shoulder, her ribs still aching from the earlier fight. How many more? Impossible to know. The purists have had 300 years to infiltrate. They could be anywhere. Ronan crumpled the note in his fist. We need to go on the offensive. Stop reacting and start hunting. How? We don't even know who they are. We know what they want. You dead. Everything else is theater. He turned to face her. I'm making you bait. Lyra's stomach dropped. Excuse me? Not literally, but we announce you publicly, make you visible, force them to come at you in ways we can predict and counter. He moved to the window, looking out at the city. Right now they're fighting from the shadows. We need to drag them into the light. And if they succeed in killing me? They won't. You'll have the best protection in the kingdom. His eyes met hers. But I won't lie to you. This is dangerous. More dangerous than anything you've faced so far. When do we start? Tomorrow night, grand ball. Every noble house in the capital invited. You'll be introduced as my new royal protector. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. The purists won't be able to resist making a move. General Cade arrived as they were finalizing the plan. She looked exhausted, her uniform streaked with dust from searching the palace. Your Majesty, we found 3 more bodies, guards who tried to stop the assassination, all killed within the last hour. She paused. We also found this in Valen's quarters. She held up a silver medallion stamped with a wolf skull. Lyra had seen that symbol before, on the purists who'd attacked the carriage, on Voss's uniform at Blackwater. The Order of the First Death, Ronan said quietly, the most extreme purist faction. They believe the original bloodline should have stayed buried. They've been quiet for 50 years. Not anymore? Cade set the medallion on the desk. If they're active again, We're looking at coordinated attacks across multiple territories. Valen was just one cell. Then we cut off the head. Ronan straightened. Send word to all territorial lords. Anyone harboring purist sympathizers will be considered traitors. I want raids on every suspected cell within the week. Your Majesty, that's a declaration of war against half the nobility. Good. Let's see which half chooses survival. He dismissed Cade with a wave. And double the preparations for tomorrow. If we're going to make Lyra visible, we do it right. The next day was chaos. Seamstresses arrived to fit Lyra for a gown, midnight blue silk that moved like water and felt completely foreign against her skin. She'd never worn anything that wasn't gray servant cloth or practical leather. The gown made her feel exposed despite covering more than either. You look uncomfortable, the head seamstress observed, adjusting the shoulders. I feel ridiculous. You look dangerous. There's a difference. The woman stepped back to assess. Nobility expects certain things. Appearance matters. Use it. I don't know how to use appearance. Then you'll learn. Quickly. She handed Lyra a pair of silver earrings shaped like wolves. From His Majesty. He said they're symbolic. They were also expensive. Lyra had never owned jewelry before. Wearing them felt like wearing someone else's skin. That evening, as servants prepared the grand hall for the ball, Ronan called her to the training yard. General Cade was already there, along with 5 of the palace's best fighters, all wolves, all experienced. You said you needed training, Ronan said. We start now. The ball's in 3 hours. Then we train for 2 hours and you clean up fast. He gestured to Cade. The general will run you through combat scenarios. These 5 will play purist assassins. Your job is to survive. Lyra looked at the 5 fighters. They were all bigger than her, older, clearly skeptical. One, a scarred man with gray threading his black hair, actually laughed. You want us to fight a 3-day-old wolf? I want you to try to kill her, Ronan corrected. She needs to learn how to handle multiple attackers in human form before she can rely on the shift. The scarred man's smile faded. You're serious? Completely. And Marcus, don't hold back. She needs this real. Marcus shrugged and moved into position with the others. Cade pulled Lyra aside. Rules are simple. They come at you however they want. You survive however you can. Weapons are allowed. Shifting is allowed. Yield before you're actually dead. That's it? That's everything. Cade stepped back. Begin. The 5 attacked as a unit. Marcus and another wolf from the front, 2 flanking, 1 circling behind. Lyra barely got her guard up before Marcus's fist slammed into her ribs. She stumbled, caught a kick to her thigh, and went down hard. Dead, Marcus announced. Lasted 4 seconds. Pathetic. Lyra climbed to her feet, anger flaring. Again. They ran it 20 times in the first hour. Lyra died 19 times, throat crushed, spine broken, skull caved in. The only time she survived more than 30 seconds was when she shifted immediately and used her wolf's strength. But Cade stopped that attempt. You won't always be able to shift. The ball is human form only. You need to fight as you are. Then teach me how. I am teaching you. You're learning what doesn't work. Cade pulled her aside while the fighters reset. You're fighting like you're still a servant, defensive, reactive, waiting for permission to strike back. I don't know how else to fight. Yes, you do. You killed Voss, you won the trial, you've got instincts. You're just not trusting them. Cade grabbed her shoulders. Stop thinking. Stop hesitating. When they come at you, move. Don't calculate, don't plan, just react. The next attempt, Lyra stopped thinking. Marcus came at her and she moved, not away but toward, ducking under his punch and driving her elbow into his throat. He gagged and stumbled. She spun and caught the flanking wolf with a kick to the knee. Bone cracked. The others hesitated and she shifted, her wolf tearing through the remaining 3 before they could coordinate. When she shifted back, Marcus was on the ground clutching his throat, and the wolf with the broken knee was cursing. The other 3 were bleeding but alive. Better, Cade said. But you shifted too early. You had them on the defensive. Press that advantage in human form before revealing the wolf. They ran it again and again. By the end of 2 hours, Lyra had survived 12 consecutive attempts without shifting. Her body was covered in bruises, her muscles screaming, but she was faster, sharper, starting to trust her instincts. That's enough, Ronan called. Clean up. The ball starts in 40 minutes. Lyra limped to the baths where servants scrubbed away the training yard's dirt and helped her into the midnight blue gown. The bruises were already fading. Wolf healing worked fast, but exhaustion sat heavy in her bones. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. 3 days ago, she'd been a servant. Now she was wearing silk and silver, about to walk into a room full of nobles as the king's official protector. The transformation felt impossible. Fake. You ready? Ronan appeared in the doorway, dressed in formal black with silver threading. He looked every inch the king, powerful, controlled, untouchable. No. Good. Neither am I. He offered his arm. Let's terrify some nobles. The grand hall blazed with light and sound. Hundreds of guests filled the space. Territorial lords, wealthy merchants, influential pack leaders, all dressed in their finest, and all turning to stare as Lyra entered on Ronan's arm. The whispers started immediately. That's her. The silver. I heard she killed Voss with her bare hands. Absolutely savage. No training whatsoever. The king's keeping a wild animal as a pet. Lyra's face burned, but she kept her expression neutral, the way servants learned to do when nobles said cruel things within earshot. Ronan's hand tightened slightly on her arm. Ignore them. They're afraid. Let them be. He led her through the crowd, introducing her to various lords and ladies who all smiled politely while their eyes calculated her worth. Some were genuinely curious. Most were hostile. A few looked at her like she was prey. One of those was Duchess Harrow, an older woman with steel-gray hair and a reputation for political ruthlessness. She intercepted them near the refreshment tables. Your Majesty, how bold of you to bring your new protector to such a public event. The Duchess Harrow, still charming as ever, I see. Ronan's tone was pleasant, but his eyes were cold. May I introduce Lyra Vane, Royal Protector? A pleasure. Harrow's gaze swept over Lyra like a butcher assessing meat. Tell me, dear, how does one go from servant to protector in less than a week? That's quite the rise. I stopped letting people tell me what I was worth, Lyra said evenly. Harrow's smile sharpened. How inspirational. I'm sure all the servants will be lining up to follow your example. Chaos and upheaval, all because one lucky Omega got noticed. Better than centuries of cruelty because one group decided they were superior. Lyra met her stare. The hierarchy's broken, Duchess. I'm just the first crack. The temperature in their corner of the room dropped several degrees. Harrow's smile disappeared entirely. Careful, girl. Cracks can be repaired, or widened until the whole structure collapses. Guess which option I prefer. Is that a threat? Ronan's voice cut like a blade. Merely an observation, Your Majesty. Harrow turned away. Enjoy your evening. She disappeared into the crowd. Lyra released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. You did well, Ronan murmured. She's testing you, seeing if you'll break under pressure. I won't. I know, that's why she's worried. The evening wore on. Lyra danced with lords she didn't know, made conversation with ladies who despised her, smiled until her face hurt. The role of protector was apparently 90% performance and 10% actual protection. She was retrieving a drink when she felt it, a presence behind her, too close, radiating hostility. She turned and found herself face to face with a young lord she didn't recognize. Mid-20s, handsome, drunk. You're the one who humiliated Theron Blackwood. I'm the one Theron rejected and tried to reclaim. There's a difference. You destroyed his life, his mate left him, his pack's falling apart. The Lord swayed slightly. He was my friend, a good man. You ruined him. He ruined himself when he rejected a fated mate bond. I just took back what was mine. You think you're special because you're a silver? You're just another broken Omega playing above your station. He grabbed her wrist, his grip bruising. Someone should remind you of your place. Lyra's wolf surged forward, but she shoved it back. Shifting at a formal ball would be disastrous. Instead, she used the training from that afternoon, twisted her wrist free, caught his arm, and leveraged his own drunk momentum to flip him onto his back. He hit the marble floor with a crack that echoed through the hall. The music stopped. Everyone stared. The young lord scrambled up, his face purple with rage and humiliation. "You bitch!" Ronan materialized between them, his presence crushing. "Lord Garrett's son, I presume. You have your father's charm." The young lord, Pierce, Lyra remembered now, went pale. "Your Majesty, she attacked me. You grabbed my royal protector at a formal event. She defended herself. Admirably, I might add." Ronan's voice could have frozen fire. "You have two choices. Apologize and leave quietly, or don't apologize and be dragged out by guards before I have you charged with assault. Pick one." Pierce looked between them, calculation warring with pride. Pride lost. "My apologies, Your Majesty. Miss Vane." He practically ran for the exit. The music resumed, conversations restarted, but the energy in the room had shifted. Lyra had just publicly humiliated a lord's son, and the king had backed her completely. The message was clear. She wasn't a pet or a curiosity. She was protected, empowered, dangerous. Ronan led her onto the dance floor. "You could have let me handle that." "He grabbed me. I handled it." Lyra let him guide her through the steps, grateful she'd watched enough nobles dance during her servant years to fake competence. Was that wrong? No, it was perfect. Every person in this room just learned you're not someone to underestimate. His hand tightened on her waist. "But it also painted a target on your back. The purists are watching. They'll make their move soon." "Good. I'm tired of waiting." They danced for another minute before Ronan spoke again, his voice low. "There's something I haven't told you about why the silver bloodline was really purged." Lyra missed a step. "What?" "The official story is that silvers were too powerful, too aggressive, too hard to control. That's partially true. But the real reason was more specific." His eyes found hers. "Silvers could bond with multiple mates, not just one. It gave them political power the other bloodlines couldn't match. They could unite entire territories through bonds alone. That's not possible. Everyone says mate bonds are singular. For normal wolves, yes. Not for silvers. Your bloodline could bond with 3, sometimes 4 mates simultaneously. That's why they were purged. Not because they were strong, because they were too connected, too capable of building alliances the other bloodlines couldn't break." Lyra's mind reeled. "Are you saying I could bond with multiple people?" "I'm saying it's possible, if you found compatible mates, which is why the purists are so desperate to kill you before you figure that out." The music ended and Ronan stepped back. "Think about what that means. Real political power. Real change." He walked away before she could respond. Lyra stood on the dance floor processing. Multiple bonds. Multiple mates. The ability to unite packs not through force, but through connection. No wonder they tried to genocide her entire bloodline. A servant approached with a note on a silver tray. "Miss Vane, this arrived for you." Lyra unfolded the paper. 4 words in elegant script. "Garden. 10 minutes. Alone." No signature, no indication of who sent it. Every instinct screamed trap. She went anyway. The palace gardens were massive. Acres of sculpted hedges and flower beds lit by hanging lanterns. Lyra followed the main path until she reached the center fountain, deserted and dark. She waited. Footsteps behind her. She spun, ready to fight, and found Keeper Maris emerging from the shadows. "You came. Good." The old woman moved to the fountain's edge. "We don't have much time. They're watching." "Who's watching?" "Everyone. The purists, the nobility, the king's advisors." Maris pulled out a small leather journal. "I need to tell you something about your bloodline that Ronan doesn't know, that no one knows except the keepers." "What?" "The Silver Wolves weren't just powerful politically. They were powerful magically. They could do things other wolves can't, heal with a touch, sense lies, influence emotions." Maris opened the journal to a page covered in dense text. "You haven't noticed because you're untrained, but the power is there, waiting." Lyra thought about the bond reversal with Theron, about how she'd known instinctively what to do despite having no training. What kind of power? Different for each silver, but always significant. Your bloodline was the bridge between human and wolf, between magic and flesh. That's why the purists fear you. You're not just a political threat, you're an existential one. How do I access it? The same way you access your wolf. Find the door and open it. Maris pressed the journal into Lyra's hands. This belonged to the last silver wolf. She documented everything before the purge killed her. Read it, learn from it, and be careful who you trust. Even Ronan? Maris hesitated. Especially Ronan. He sees you as a tool to fix his broken kingdom. That's not the same as seeing you as a person. Before Lyra could respond, an explosion rocked the palace. Fire bloomed from the grand hall's windows. Screams erupted. Maris grabbed her arm. They're here. The order of the first death. They're attacking the ball. She shoved Lyra toward the palace. Go. Protect your king. And remember, you're more than they know. Lyra ran. The grand hall was chaos. Fire spreading, nobles fleeing, wolves fighting in both human and animal form. At the center of it all stood a figure in black armor, wielding silver blades and cutting through guards like wheat. The attacker was massive, clearly alpha, and heading straight for Ronan. Lyra shifted mid-run, her silver wolf bursting through the garden doors and into the hall. She hit the armored figure like a battering ram, driving them away from Ronan and through a stone pillar. The armor cracked. The figure rolled and came up swinging. One blade caught her shoulder. Silver burned. She yelped and retreated, shifting back to human to dodge another strike. The attacker's helmet had cracked in the collision, revealing a woman's face. Middle-aged, scarred, eyes burning with fanatical certainty. The silver abomination, the woman hissed. Your existence is blasphemy. Get in line. I've heard that before. Lyra dodged another swing. Who are you? Commander Sarah, first death, and your executioner. Sarah moved like violence incarnate, trained, experienced, utterly convinced of her righteousness. Lyra could barely keep up. Her 3 days of wolf experience nothing against Sarah's lifetime of combat. A blade opened her side. Another grazed her throat. She was losing. But then she remembered what Maris said about silver magic, about power waiting to be accessed. She stopped dodging and did something insane. She grabbed Sarah's blade with her bare hand. Silver seared her palm, but she held on and reached for that door inside herself. Not the wolf. Something else. Something deeper. Power flooded through her. She felt Sarah's emotions, the hatred, the fear, the desperate need to protect a world that was already dying. And beneath it all, doubt. Tiny, but growing. About the purists' cause. About whether genocide was ever righteous. Lyra pushed into that doubt. You're afraid, she said, blood dripping from her cut palm. Afraid that everything you've done was for nothing. That the hierarchy you're protecting is already broken. Shut up. You've killed innocents. Betrayed people you loved, sacrificed everything for a lie. Lyra pushed harder, amplifying Sarah's doubt until it became certainty. And deep down, you know it. Sarah screamed and wrenched her blade free, but her hands were shaking now. The fanatical certainty was crumbling. Ronan's black wolf hit her from the side. The impact drove Sarah into the wall. She slid down, unconscious but alive. The other attackers, seeing their commander fall, retreated into the night. The battle was over. Lyra collapsed, her various wounds bleeding freely. Ronan shifted back and caught her before she hit the ground. What did you do to her? I don't know, something Maris told me about. She pressed a hand to her side, trying to stop the bleeding. Silver magic. Emotion manipulation, maybe? That's not possible. Said the king to the extinct bloodline. She laughed weakly. Nothing's impossible anymore. Healers arrived to tend the wounded. 17 dead, 40 injured. The Grand Hall was destroyed, but they'd captured Commander Sarah and driven off the first death. It was a victory. A small one, but real. 3 days later, after interrogations and investigations, the truth came out. The Order of the First Death had cells in every major territory. Hundreds of members. Thousands of sympathizers. But Sarah's capture had given them names, locations, evidence. Ronan launched coordinated raids across the kingdom. Within a week, they'd dismantled 60% of the purist network. The remaining members went deep underground. Lyra spent those days reading the journal Maris had given her, learning about her bloodline's abilities. Emotion sensing, healing touch, limited precognition, and the multiple mate bonds Ronan had mentioned. The last silver wolf had bonded with 3 mates, an alpha, a beta, and an omega. She'd used those bonds to unite 3 warring territories and create 50 years of peace before the purge killed her and her mates. The journal's final entry was dated the day before her death. Just one line. They fear what connects us more than what divides us, so they choose division. May whoever finds this choose differently. Lyra closed the journal and looked out her window at the city. Somewhere out there, the remaining purists were regrouping, planning, preparing for the next attack. But for the first time since this began, Lyra wasn't afraid. She was ready. The raids yielded more than just captured purists. They uncovered a network of safe houses, weapons caches, and most damning, detailed plans for a coordinated strike called Operation Extinction. The target date was 3 weeks away. The objective was simple: kill every known Silver sympathizer, destroy the palace, and execute Ronan and Lyra publicly. They're planning a war, General Cade said, spreading maps across the war room table. Simultaneous attacks on 12 major cities. They've got support from at least 40 noble houses. Ronan studied the maps, his expression carved from ice. 40 houses. That's a third of the nobility. The purists have been recruiting for decades. They've convinced people that your reforms are destroying tradition, that allowing a Silver to live will collapse the hierarchy. Cade tapped a location on the map. Their main force is gathering here, the Ashenfell Ruins, remote, defensible, close to the northern border. How many? Best estimate? 2,000 fighters. Maybe more. The number hung in the air like smoke. Lyra felt her stomach drop. 2,000 trained warriors versus what? The Royal Guard numbered maybe 500. Even with territorial allies, they'd be outnumbered. We can't win a direct confrontation, she said. No, we can't. Ronan looked at her. Which is why we're not going to fight them. Then what? We're going to turn them. He straightened, decision made. The purists believe they're protecting the natural order. We prove to them that the natural order was a lie. Show them what Silvers really are, what they were always meant to be. Lyra understood what he was suggesting. You want me to use the bond ability? Unite people the way the last Silver did. Not just people, lords, alphas, the ones who are on the fence about the purist cause. Ronan moved to the window. If you can bond with influential leaders, prove that connection doesn't weaken the hierarchy but strengthens it, we can fracture their support. That's insane. I don't even know how to initiate a bond deliberately. Then you learn. Fast. We have 3 weeks. Keeper Maris was summoned. She arrived with an armful of ancient texts and a grim expression. You want to force multiple mate bonds in 3 weeks. Do you understand how dangerous that is? I understand we're out of options, Ronan said. Can it be done? Maris set down her books with a heavy thud. Theoretically, Silver Wolves could sense bond compatibility and accelerate the connection, but it required consent from both parties and absolute emotional honesty. Force it, and you create something unstable, dangerous. I won't force anyone, Lyra said. But if there are compatible mates out there, I need to know how to find them. Well, over the next week, Maris taught her. It started with meditation, learning to sense the emotional signatures of people around her. Every person radiated energy differently. Most felt closed off, their emotions locked behind walls. But a few, very few, felt open, receptive, like doors waiting to be pushed. Those are potential bonds, Maris explained. Not guaranteed, but possible. The connection forms when both parties recognize each other at a soul level. It can't be manufactured. Lyra practiced on the palace staff first. She could sense their emotions now, fear, curiosity, resentment, loyalty, but none of them felt like potential bonds. Their emotional signatures were complete, satisfied, not searching for connection. Then Ronan brought in the territorial lords who'd remained loyal despite purist pressure. 15 alphas, all powerful, all skeptical. They gathered in the throne room, watching Lyra like she was a specimen to be studied. Gentlemen, Ronan addressed them, you've all remained loyal to the crown despite significant pressure to join the purist cause. I'm asking you now to take that loyalty further, to consider bonding with Lyra and creating alliances that can't be broken by politics or bribes. The room erupted in protest. Bond with a Silver? That's madness. You're asking us to tie ourselves to an abomination. My mate would never allow... Enough! Ronan's voice cut through the chaos. I'm not ordering you to do anything. I'm offering you a choice. bond with her, and gain access to power the purists can't touch, or leave now and hope they don't target you when the war starts. Silence fell. The lords looked between each other, calculating. Lyra could feel their emotions: greed, fear, ambition, doubt. But underneath, a few threads of something else: curiosity, interest, possibility. She focused on those threads. Lord Marcus stepped forward first, the scarred fighter from her training sessions. "I'll hear her out." At least. Two others followed: Lady Sarah, no relation to the captured commander who ruled the eastern forests, and Lord Kane, a younger alpha from the southern territories. The rest left, some angrily, some reluctantly. Lyra faced the three who remained. "I can't promise this will work. I'm still learning, but if a bond forms, it'll be real. Not political, not strategic, based on actual compatibility. And if it doesn't work," Kane asked, "then nothing happens and you're free to leave." Marcus crossed his arms. "What do we have to do?" "Let me read you, your emotions, your core self. If there's compatibility, we'll both feel it." She looked at Maris. "Right?" "In theory, I've never actually witnessed this." The keeper shrugged. "You're making history. Try not to die." Lyra started with Marcus. She reached out with that silver sense, that ability to read emotions, and touched his core. What she found surprised her. Not the brutal fighter everyone saw, but someone deeply lonely. His mate had died 5 years ago in a purist raid. He'd never recovered, never stopped grieving, and beneath the grief, a hunger for connection so fierce it made her ache. The bond snapped into place like a key turning in a lock. Marcus gasped and stumbled back, his hand going to his chest. What the hell was that? A bond. Lyra felt it too. A thread connecting them, thin but growing stronger. Not romantic, not possessive, just there. A link between souls that recognized each other. "I can feel you," Marcus said, wonder in his voice. "Your emotions, your presence. It's like you're inside my head." "Is it invasive?" "No, it's..." He struggled for words. "It's like I've been alone in a dark room for 5 years, and someone just turned on a light. I forgot what connection felt like." Lady Sarah stepped forward next. "My turn." Her core was different, sharp, ambitious, fiercely protective of her territory. She'd supported Ronan because it was strategic, not because she believed in his reforms. But underneath, Lyra sensed frustration. Sarah was brilliant, but constantly dismissed by male alphas who saw her gender as weakness. The bond formed differently this time. Stronger. More immediate. Sarah actually laughed when it clicked into place. "I'll be damned. You're real." "What do you feel?" Lyra asked. "Validation? Like someone finally sees me for what I am, not what they expect me to be." Sarah's smile was fierce. "I'm in. Whatever you need." Lord Kane was last. Young, uncertain, clearly terrified of making the wrong choice. Lyra reached for his core and found nothing. No compatibility, no resonance. Their emotional signatures clashed rather than harmonized. "I'm sorry," she said, withdrawing. "We're not compatible." Kane looked relieved and disappointed in equal measure. "So no bond?" "No bond. But that doesn't make you less valuable. You're here because you chose loyalty. That matters." He nodded and stepped back. Lyra turned to Ronan, exhausted. 2 bonds. Is that enough?" "It's a start." He addressed Marcus and Sarah. "Spread the word. Carefully. Let other lords know the bonds are real and beneficial. We need to fracture pure support before they attack." Over the next 2 weeks, word spread. Some lords came to test the bond possibility. Most didn't. But the ones who did, 7 total, created a network of alliances that couldn't be bought or broken. They could feel Lyra's emotions, her intentions, her absolute commitment to protecting people rather than perpetuating the hierarchy. It changed them. Lord Garrett, father of the young lord who'd grabbed Lyra at the ball, arrived in secret. "My son told me what happened, how you defended yourself without killing him." Garrett looked older than his years, tired. "I've supported the purists because I thought they were protecting our way of life. But I've watched them become fanatics. Murderers. That's not protection. That's just fear." Lyra sensed the bond compatibility immediately. Garrett's core was built on genuine care for his people, corrupted by purist propaganda into supporting the wrong cause. When the bond formed, he actually cried. "I've been so wrong about everything." "Then help us make it right," Lyra said. He did. Garrett used his influence to sow doubt among moderate purists. Some listened, others dug in deeper. But the network was fracturing, just like Ronan had predicted. With a week left before Operation Extinction's launch date, Commander Sarah broke during interrogation. Not from torture, from exposure to Lyra. They'd brought Lyra to the dungeons as a test to see if her presence would crack Sarah's fanaticism. The captured commander took one look at her and started talking. "You shouldn't exist, but you do, and I can feel it. The power, the connection, everything the purist taught me was a lie." Sarah's voice was hollow. "We plan to kill you to protect the hierarchy, but the hierarchy is already dead, isn't it? You're proof of that." "Tell me about Operation Extinction," Lyra said gently. "Help me stop it." Sarah told them everything. The attack plans, the backup locations, the identity of the First Death's leader, High Priest Corvus, a former royal advisor who'd been presumed dead for 20 years. He'd orchestrated the Purist resurrection, rebuilt their network, and now commanded an army of fanatics from the Ashenfell ruins. "He won't stop," Sarah said. "Not until you're dead or he is. This is his life's work, his holy mission." "Then we go to him," Ronan decided. "End this before it spreads further." General Cade nearly had an aneurysm. "Your Majesty, Ashenfell is a fortress. We'd be walking into a slaughter." "Not if we don't walk in as enemies." Ronan looked at Lyra. "How many bonds can you form simultaneously?" "I don't know. I've never tried more than one at a time." "Then we find out. Because we're going to march into Ashenfell with an army of bonded wolves and show Corvus exactly what he's trying to destroy." The plan was insane. Suicidal, according to Cade. But they had 8 days and no better options. Lyra spent those days bonding. She pushed herself past exhaustion, reading dozens of alphas, forming connections with anyone compatible. By the end, she had 17 bonded mates, Marcus, Sarah, Garrett, and 14 others. All different, all powerful in their own ways, all connected to her through threads of genuine compatibility. The bonds didn't make her stronger physically, but they gave her something more valuable: perspective. 17 different viewpoints, experiences, strengths. She could sense their emotions, draw on their courage when her own faltered, share knowledge instantaneously. It was like being 17 people at once. Overwhelming, incredible, terrifying. "How do you feel?" Maris asked after the last bond formed. "Like I'm going to shatter into pieces, or maybe become something entirely new. I can't tell which." "That's normal." The last Silver reported similar sensations. Maris studied her, but she also said the bonds made her unbreakable. When one part of her wanted to give up, the others held her together. Remember that. The march to Ashenfell took 3 days. They moved openly, deliberately. Ronan, Lyra, the 17 bonded alphas, and 500 royal guards. No attempt at stealth. They wanted Corvus to see them coming. The Ashenfell ruins rose from the Badlands like broken teeth. Ancient stone walls half collapsed, towers crumbling, but still defensible. Purist banners flew from every rampart. As their army approached, wolves poured from the ruins. Hundreds of them, maybe 1,000. They stopped 100 yards apart. Ronan rode forward on horseback, Lyra walking beside him in human form. From the purist ranks, an old man emerged, white-haired, skeletal thin, eyes burning with zealot fervor. High Priest Corvus. "King Ronan, how kind of you to deliver the abomination directly to us." Corvus's voice carried across the distance. "We were going to come for you, but this works better." Corvus, 20 years hiding in caves and you still can't grow a decent beard. Ronan's contempt was palpable. "We're here to give you one chance. Surrender now. Disband the First Death, and I'll show mercy." Corvus laughed. "Mercy? For protecting the natural order? For preventing the collapse of everything our ancestors built?" He pointed at Lyra. "That thing represents the end of our world. Silver wolves destroyed civilization once. We won't let it happen again." "Silver wolves united civilization," Lyra called back. "Your ancestors were so threatened by connection that they chose genocide. And you've spent 3 centuries lying about it." "Connection? You call multiple mate bonds connection? It's perversion, an abomination against nature. Then watch this. Lyra reached out through all 17 bonds simultaneously and pulled. The bonded alphas stepped forward as one, their emotional signatures blazing. The connections between them were visible now, threads of light linking Lyra to each mate, creating a web of power that made the air shimmer. Gasps erupted from the purest ranks. Some wolves actually fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the sheer presence of so much concentrated bond energy. "This is what you fear," Lyra said. "Not tyranny, not domination, just people choosing to connect, choosing each other, building something stronger than any hierarchy." "Lies!" Uda Corvus's face had gone purple. "You're twisting their minds, corrupting them. Then let them tell you themselves." Lyra gestured to Lord Garrett, who stepped forward. "I was one of you," Garrett called to the purest army. "I believed every word. I thought we were saving our world. But the bond showed me the truth. We're not protecting anything. We're just afraid of change, of losing power, of admitting we were wrong." Another bonded alpha stepped forward, then another, each sharing their story. How the bond had changed them, opened their eyes, given them perspective they'd been missing. The purest ranks wavered, whispers spread, some wolves shifted uncomfortably. Corvus saw his support crumbling and made a choice. Kill them all, for the natural order. The purest army charged. Lyra's bonded mates shifted as one, their wolves forming a protective circle around her. The royal guard surged forward. The two armies collided with the sound of thunder. But Lyra didn't fight. Instead, she reached deeper into the bond network, drawing on all 17 connections simultaneously. The power that flooded through her was staggering. Not physical strength, but emotional resonance. She felt every bonded mate's courage, their determination, their absolute certainty that they were fighting for something real. And she projected it outward. The emotional wave hit the purest army like a tsunami. Every wolf fighting felt it. The absolute conviction of the bonded mates, the genuine connection between them, the proof that everything Corvus had told them was a lie. Wolves started dropping their weapons, shifting back to human form, refusing to fight. "No!" Corvus screamed. "You will obey. Kill the silver." But they wouldn't, couldn't. The bonds had shown them truth, and truth was more powerful than fanaticism. Corvus shifted into his wolf form, gray and scarred and ancient, and charged directly at Lyra. The bonded mates moved to intercept, but she stopped them. "Let him come!" She shifted as he reached her, her silver wolf meeting his gray. They collided in a tangle of fur and fury. Corvus was old but experienced, each move calculated to kill. He got his jaws around her throat and bit down. Pain exploded through her. The bond network screamed. She felt Marcus's rage, Sarah's fear, Garrett's determination, all 17 mates lending her their strength. Lyra twisted impossibly, the silver magic allowing her body to move in ways normal wolves couldn't. She broke Corvus's grip and caught his leg in her jaws. Bone crunched. He howled but didn't let go, his claws raking her side. They fought in the dust and blood. Two ideologies clashing in physical form. Corvus fighting for tradition, hierarchy, the world he'd known. Lyra fighting for choice, connection, the possibility of something better. She was younger, faster, but he was desperate, fighting for his entire worldview. His jaws found her shoulder, pain. Her vision blurred. Through the bonds she felt her mates trying to reach her, but purest wolves held them back. She was alone. Except she wasn't. The bonds pulsed. 17 voices in her head, all speaking at once. "Get up. Don't let him win. We're with you. You're not alone." Lyra drove upward with everything she had, throwing Corvus off. He landed badly, his injured leg giving out. She was on him in a heartbeat, her jaws closing around his throat. One bite and she could end this, but she didn't. She held him there, teeth pressing against his windpipe but not crushing, and looked into his eyes. What she saw was fear, absolute terror, not of death, of being wrong. She released him and shifted back to human form, standing over his prone wolf body. "You lose," she said quietly, "not because I killed you, because your entire belief system was built on a lie, and lies always collapse eventually." Corvus shifted back, bloodied and broken. "Then kill me. I won't live in your corrupted world. I'm not going to kill you. That would make you a martyr. Lyra looked at the assembled armies, purists staring in shock, royal forces waiting for her command. I'm going to give you the same choice you never gave my ancestors. Live, change, or exile yourself somewhere your hatred can't poison anyone else. She turned her back on him and walked toward Ronan. Behind her, she heard Corvus sob. The battle ended not with violence but with choices. Half the purist army surrendered. A quarter fled. The rest, the true believers, followed Corvus into exile, heading north toward the frozen wastes where they could nurse their fanaticism in isolation. It was over. The ride back to the capital took 4 days. Lyra spent them learning to manage the bond network, to separate her emotions from her mates, to exist as both individual and collective. It was exhausting. But every time she felt overwhelmed, one of the bonds would pulse with reassurance. She wasn't alone anymore. Would never be alone again. The palace welcomed them as heroes. A grand celebration was planned. But first Ronan called Lyra to his office. You changed everything, he said without preamble. The purists are broken. The hierarchy is, well, it's still broken, but differently now. We have a chance to rebuild it into something better. We? Lyra raised an eyebrow. I thought I was just the tool you were using to fix your kingdom. Ronan had the grace to look uncomfortable. Maris told you that? She was protecting me, making sure I understood the difference between being valued and being used. Lyra sat across from him. For the record, I don't think you're using me. Not anymore. You care. In your own emotionally constipated way. He almost smiled. Emotionally constipated. That's a new one. But accurate. She leaned forward. So what happens now? I'm your royal protector, bonded to 17 territorial lords and apparently capable of reshaping political structures through emotional connection. Where does that leave us? Partners, if you want. Ronan met her eyes. I can't bond with you. I'm already mated, politically, to a duchess in the east, but I can work with you, support you, help you build whatever comes next. And if what comes next is tearing down the monarchy, then we'll negotiate. He pulled out a document. I've been drafting new laws, abolishing the collar system entirely, creating protections for omegas, establishing councils where bonded networks like yours have official political representation. He slid the document across. Read it. Tell me what I'm missing. Lyra read. The reforms were radical, dismantling centuries of hierarchy, redistributing power, creating accountability where none had existed. It was everything she'd dreamed of during those 21 years in the collar. This will start a civil war. Probably, but we just survived one. We can survive another. Ronan stood and moved to the window. Or maybe we won't have to. Maybe the bonds you've created will be enough to hold things together while we rebuild. That's a lot of faith to put in 17 connections. I'm putting faith in you. There's a difference. 6 months later, the reforms passed. Not without resistance. 3 territories tried to secede, 12 noble houses staged protests, and assassination attempts became so common that Lyra stopped counting them. But the bonded network held. Every time resistance flared, the connected alphas worked to mediate, to find compromise, to prove that cooperation was stronger than conflict. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was better. Lyra stood on the palace balcony watching the city below. The collar foundries had been shut down last month. The iron melted and reforged into tools for building instead of binding. Former servants were being educated, trained, given choices they'd never had before. Some thrived, others struggled. Change was messy. But it was happening. Marcus joined her on the balcony. The Eastern Territories just ratified the Omega Protection Laws. That's all of them then, every territory in the kingdom. Lyra felt satisfaction through the bond. Not just hers, but shared among all 17 mates. We actually did it. You did it. We just helped. Marcus leaned against the railing. My daughter wrote to me yesterday. First time in 3 years. She said she's proud of me for choosing courage over tradition. That's good. It's everything. His voice was rough with emotion. I'd given up on ever having a relationship with her. The bond gave that back to me. Gave me perspective I'd lost. Lyra felt the truth of it through their connection. The bonds hadn't just changed politics, they changed people. Made them see beyond their own experiences. Build bridges instead of walls. There's something else, Marcus said. Lord Theron requested a meeting. He's waiting downstairs. Lyra's stomach clenched. She hadn't seen Theron since the bond severance 6 months ago. Hadn't wanted to. What does he want? To apologize, apparently. You don't have to see him. No, I should. She straightened. Some things need closure. Theron looked different, thinner, older. His eyes carried a weight that hadn't been there before. He stood when Lyra entered the receiving room, his posture deferential. Thank you for seeing me. What do you want, Theron? To say I'm sorry, properly this time. He took a breath. I rejected you because I was a coward. I saw power and status as the only things worth having. When the bond formed with someone I'd been taught was worthless, I panicked. Threw you away like you were nothing. His voice cracked. You deserved better. You always did. Lyra studied him. No bond connection to read his emotions anymore. She had to rely on observation, on the skills she'd learned as a servant. What she saw was genuine remorse. I don't forgive you, not completely. What you did hurt too much for easy forgiveness. She paused. But I accept your apology, and I hope you find whatever you're looking for. I already did. Peace with myself. That's enough. Theron bowed slightly. I'll leave you alone now. Just needed to say it once without the bond forcing honesty. He left. Lyra stood in the empty room, processing. The old her would have wanted revenge, wanted him to suffer. But the bonds had changed her too, shown her that holding on to pain only poisoned the holder. She let it go. Ronan found her an hour later in the garden where she'd first met Keeper Maris. Theron gone? Yes. It's done. She turned to face him. I've been thinking about the future, about what comes after we've reformed the kingdom. And I want to find others, other potential Silvers who might have been collared and hidden. Lyra's voice strengthened with certainty. If I exist, there have to be more. People who were buried the same way I was. They deserve the same chance. Ronan considered. That could take years, decades. Then it takes decades. I've got time. She smiled slightly. And 17 mates who can help search. You're going to build an army of Silvers. I'm going to give people back what was stolen from them. Whether they choose to be an army is up to them. Lyra looked out at the city. The hierarchy spent 3 centuries trying to erase my bloodline. I'm going to spend however long it takes proving they failed. Ronan nodded slowly. You'll have crown support, resources, whatever you need. Thank you. Don't thank me. You earned this. Every bit of it. He moved to stand beside her. 21 years ago, someone decided you were worthless. They put a collar on you and tried to bury who you were. And instead of breaking, you survived, fought, became the thing they feared most. I got lucky. No, you were strong. There's a difference. Ronan met her eyes. The girl they buried didn't die. She became the power that reshaped everything. Remember that. Lyra would. In the weeks and months and years that followed, as she searched for other hidden Silvers and slowly built a network that spanned the kingdom and beyond, she'd remember. She'd been buried, collared, silenced, told she was nothing, and she'd proven them all wrong. 3 years later, on the anniversary of her first shift, Lyra stood before a crowd of former servants, 23 of them, all freshly freed from their collars, all discovering they had wolves after decades of suppression. Some were Silvers, most weren't, but they all deserved the chance to choose their own path. I can't promise you easy lives, she told them. Freedom is harder than servitude in a lot of ways. You'll have to make choices, face consequences, build yourselves from scratch, but you'll do it as yourselves, not as someone else's property. One woman, older, her gray hair cut short, her collar removed just hours ago, raised her hand. What if we're not strong enough? What if we fail? Lyra thought about the carriage crash, the trial of sovereignty, the battle at Ashenfell, all the moments she'd been certain she'd die, all the times she'd survived anyway. Then you fail, and you get up, and you try again. She smiled. That's what strength actually is. Not never falling, just refusing to stay down. The woman nodded, tears streaming down her face. Around her others cried too. Relief, fear, hope. All the emotions Lyra had felt that first night when Ronan broke her collar. It never got easier, watching people discover freedom for the first time. but it never got old either. That night, alone in her chambers, Lyra opened the journal the last Silver had left behind. She'd read it dozens of times, memorizing every detail. But tonight she added her own entry to the blank pages at the back. To whoever finds this next, they tried to bury us, collared us, erased us from history and memory. They failed. We're still here, still fighting, still connecting. The hierarchy they built was always a lie. We're just the proof. Keep fighting, keep connecting. And when they try to bury you, become the thing that breaks through the soil and grows toward the light. You're not alone. You never were. LV. She closed the journal and looked out her window at the city blazing with light. Somewhere out there, more Silvers were waiting. More people in collars needed freedom. More connections needed to be made. The work would never truly be done. But that was okay. Lyra Vane had spent 21 years being nothing. She'd spend the rest of her life making sure no one else had to be nothing ever again. And this time, no one would ever cage her again. She was the Silver Wolf, the impossible survivor, the girl who'd been buried and become the power that reshaped the world. And she was just getting started.